There have been a lot of speculation and questions regarding the June 30th presence on Omar Street in Hampton. These indictments provide some insight into the ongoing investigation. Do they ever? However, to preserve the integrity of the ongoing investigation and to protect the victims, I conclude
The Vinton County prosecutor wrote,
we may have been wrong about little Elizabeth Siders. Now, I don't know. I hate to say, but look, this is really bad. For weeks, a whole lot of people looked at this case, and let's see, let's show who we're talking about here. Elizabeth Siders. Okay, everybody knows who we're talking about. Now, for weeks, a lot of people looked at this case and asked the very same question. The question was Elizabeth a victim too? Was she trapped in that house along with those kiddos? Let me find my glasses here. And, most of us, we want to think the best of everybody. It's hard for us to see a young girl. It's hard for us to see bad. At least it is for me. I don't know about y'all, but it's hard for me to look at this girl and see something other than a victim. It just is. Now, we asked, was Elizabeth a victim? Was she trapped in that house? Was she controlled by the men or even Grandma Siders? Heck, I don't know. Was she another woman in the middle of that mess who had been broken down, isolated, and then left with no way out? That was a fair question based on what we knew at the time. But tonight, the paper trail has changed. When the paper trail changes, we change with it. It's just the way that it's got to go. Elizabeth Siders has now been indicted alongside of Gary Siders Jr. in a separate child sex abuse case involving a minor authorities say was not part of their immediate family. That opens this door into a whole other realm. That is not a small update. That is not a footnote. That changes the whole frame.
These indictments provide some insight into the ongoing investigation. However, to preserve the integrity of the ongoing investigation and to protect the victims, I conclude my statement here. Read that again. The official charged with explaining why law enforcement entered a home on Omar Street in Hampton, Ohio stopped talking at the exact moment the public needed him to continue. That silence is not a legal formality. It is the sound of a case frame breaking. Think of this case as a house with two front doors. The first door was labeled, welfare check. The second door was labeled, DNA warrant. Law enforcement did not knock on the first door. They opened the second one. The public was told the first door. The paper says the second. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Real Court Case Verdict. On June 30, 2026, officials entered that house and found 16 children. That fact was reported.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This whole thing has turned into something just completely different. Oh, I'm glad you're helping us digest. What's a huge surprise to me? What about you? I'm surprised in the whole thing. I'm surprised that there was so many sexual abuse investigations and cases prior to this. So they apparently have been looking for him. They've been looking for Gary Jr., and he's been running. And I wonder if he knew. I bet he knew. Because if these kids were a member of the family, like Marnie said, one of those men were his sister's husband, they knew. They knew that the police were coming. They just didn't know when.
What was not reported immediately is why they were there. The Ohio Attorney General's office now confirms investigators were seeking Gary Jr.'s DNA in a separate child sex abuse investigation.
Along with this announcement, Wilson announced that Gary Jr., Elizabeth, Gary Sr., and Christina were all indicted on numerous charges related to the endangerment of the 16 kids within their home. The charges in the separate child endangering investigation, and that's with the 4 in the family. 2 second-degree felony counts of endangering children, 10 third-degree felony counts of endangering, 7 misdemeanor counts of endangering, and that's 19 charges for Gary Jr. Elizabeth, I guess it's going to be the exact same 19 charges. And then Gary Sr. only has 16. So there's 10 third-degree felony endangering and 6 misdemeanor endangering. And then Christina has 19. So she's got 3 more than Grandpa. 2 second-degree felony, 10 third-degree, and 7 misdemeanor. So it looks like Grandpa's the only one that gets those 2 second degree. The most those are the harshest ones anyway. The indictments in this case include charges in the alternative, meaning that multiple counts or different theories of a crime have been charged for the same acts. Doing so allows for a more complete and appropriate presentation of evidence to the court and jury, Wilson explained.
Not a health inspection, not a truancy follow-up, a DNA warrant. The warrant was never a welfare check.
I think. Gary Jr. Yep. Share my screen. Look here, y'all. So whenever they were first booked into jail, if you were not with us here, so this is Gary Jr.'s, and I even said, it said that he was pregnant. Is this the one? See, currently pregnant or postpartum. And you see they circled yes. You see that? And then they marked it out and they put no. They had made so many mistakes on this paper, or at least that's what we thought it was mistakes. Yep. And then let me grab hers, Elizabeth's. We'll share this one instead. Now hers says that she's not pregnant, but we watched them bring her in. They did not have her handcuffed like they did the rest of them. See, I got all their stuff. And I need to put all this up on my Patreon so you guys can look through it yourselves. See, here's hers. And it's got all of her charges. Nope. But Gary's, he was pregnant. So, Miss Shauna, I think you just, yeah, it makes so much sense now, doesn't it? Yeah, Miss Shauna broke the mystery.
The old public frame asked one question: was Elizabeth Siders a victim too?
Because this case is no longer just about poverty. Not for me, it ain't. It is no longer just about neglect. It's no longer just about 16 kids being found in horrific conditions inside of a home in Hampton, Ohio. Now, according to new reporting, the investigation that brought law enforcement to that house in the first place did not begin as a simple welfare check. Oh, no. It began with a child sex abuse investigation, some allegations. Now, investigators were reportedly there seeking Gary Jr.'s DNA. Mm-hmm. And when they got inside, that's when they found the 16 kids. Shockingly, they were there investigating the sex abuse claim from a whole other kid outside of their family. And then they found all these kids. So now that we know that part of it, heck, when we were trying to guess what had brought them there, we knew that it was a prior investigation, but most of us were guessing completely wrong. But we were guessing that it was him outside peeing off the porch or something. Boy, were we wrong. Oh, no. And it wasn't just, this investigation wasn't just Gary Jr. Oh, no. Elizabeth. Pregnant Elizabeth. Or, well, she wasn't, she's pregnant, ain't she? Oh, man. Well, tonight we are going to do what we always do on Hillbilly Crime. We are not going to marry our first theory. No, we are not going to protect a storyline just because it fell apart. Nope. We are going to follow the paper. And the paper says that this case just got a whole lot darker.
That was fair based on what was known. Women can be controlled. Women can be trapped. Women can be both harmed and responsible for harm. But the new indictment changes the legal axis. Elizabeth Siders is now indicted alongside Gary Siders Jr. on charges involving a minor who was not part of their immediate family.
All right, so that means between January of 22 and September of 22, they were fooling with whoever they were fooling with. Should not have been fooling with. Why can't people just keep their hands to themselves? I mean, he was married. He's married to her and getting her pregnant as much as he wanted. Looks like he was getting it as much as he wanted. Why do men do that? And it's not just men, women are dirty too, man. Sheesh. Trying to close out on my stuff. Philip, is she really with child again? I think so. The paperwork on her intake said no, that she wasn't, but we've since heard since then that she is, but I don't know. We don't have that confirmed at all. Nature walks. I think it's going to get worse. I think so. I think you're right. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. Sidetrack says, what did I miss? Well, They're indicted, and they are doing some really, really nasty things with kids that they shouldn't be doing. That was one of the questions that I had, if you remember. It was probably on Gavin's show. If you watched us on Gavin, I said that, where have they been doing it at? Like, she's pregnant so much. Where are they getting it on at? We saw pictures of that house. We know what that house looks like. Where are they getting it on at? And they got so many people right there. They doing it right there in front of everybody. It just I think it's a very fair question.
The state is not saying she failed to protect. The state is saying she participated.
She had a duty as their mother to protect them. She had a duty as their mother to not let them suffer. That's what we have to do, is sacrifice anything for our kids. Whenever I bought this little house, it only has 4 rooms, 4-room little shack up in the holler. But it was all I had. It was all I could afford. It was all we were going to have. That means I didn't have no bedroom. That means I had to figure it out. But my kids needed bedrooms. So out of the 4 rooms, one kid's got 1 bedroom, one kid's got the other bedroom, and then this room triples as my bedroom. I got a couch right there that I sleep on. This is my workspace, my desk, my big fancy desk Jenny gave me. So it gives me a little space, a little corner workspace. And I guess it would triple as a living room, but we don't never have company, so I ain't gotta worry about that. And then our kitchen. And then we got the bathroom that's in Alan's room. But,
that is not a footnote.
Everything about this whole thing is just tragic. It is. All right. So the new indictment changed this whole case. Gary Jr. Reportedly faces 27 total charges. Do you guys think this is life? You think they'll ever get out? Elizabeth Siders reportedly faces 23 total charges. Gary Sr. reportedly faces 16 endangerment charges. Christina, grandma, reportedly faces 19 charges. And, them two wouldn't be facing any charges if they didn't let Junior and his wife move in. You know what? I'm hoping, well, I better not say that, because I don't know how involved Grandma and Grandpa have been. I don't know what all Grandma and Grandpa knew. They had to have known something. And they could have at any time picked up the phone and called and said, hey, my son and his wife are right here in my house, and I need you to come get them. Yeah, I need you to do whatever you need to do and get right on over here. Miss Carrie Ann, I grew up in poverty, but it didn't look like that. I know, man, I know. This was an old article here. It was from 2021. Pike County Sheriff's Office up in Ohio. Sheriff Tracy D. Evans reports that on October 8th at 5:37 p.m., deputies executed a search warrant at the residence of Gary Siders Jr. at 2495 Bobo Road. Bobo Road in Beaver. There were numerous items recovered that had been reported stolen from a local construction site. So this is what made me think it was going to be theft. Was this history of it. Warrants will be requested, and then it went on. This is what made me think it was going to be something to do like receiving stolen property or theft or just something like that. That's what my brain was telling me. I was wrong. I was very wrong. But the headline tonight is not just the number of charges. The headline is that Gary Jr. and Elizabeth are now both indicted in a separate child sex abuse case. Now, according to reporting, that case involves a minor who was not part of their immediate family. Now, that is the part that blows up the old public frame, blows it all out of the water. Because if Elizabeth is now charged in that child sex case, then this is not just a question of whether she failed to protect her own children, right? The allegation now is that she participated in abusing outside that original frame. So that's a very different conversation altogether. All charges are still allegations. They are presumed innocent until and unless they are proven guilty in a court of law. But a grand jury has now said that there is probable cause for these charges to move forward. So that does say something. And we're not talking about a Letcher County grand jury. We're talking about a Vinton County grand jury in Ohio. So this is the part that I think we should really hear. According to those new reports, law enforcement did not just show up at the Siders' house for a routine welfare check. They were reportedly there because of the sex abuse investigation. Investigators were reportedly seeking Gary's DNA. That matters because for weeks people have asked, well, why now? Well, why June 30th? Well, why did authorities finally go through that door? Well, now the answer appears to be that another investigation led them there, another sexual abuse investigation. So that means those 16 kids were found because a separate sex abuse case cracked open the door. That's chilling because it raises the question that if that other investigation had not happened, when would those children have ever been found? When one of them died? So here's the charge breakdown from the reporting. Gary Jr. faces 2 counts of sexual battery involving a non-family member, 2 counts of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor involving a non-family member, 4 counts of public indecency, 2 second-degree felony counts of endangering children, and then 10 third-degree felony counts of endangering and 7 misdemeanor counts of endangering. Now, Elizabeth, she reportedly faces 2 counts of sexual battery involving a non-family member, 2 counts of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor involving a non-family member. And this is her. She's charged with it, not just Gary. That changes a whole lot, too. Miss Tricia said, did the children eat the drywall? You know, I asked that same question. I have seen in other stories where children were starved and they ate the drywall off of the walls. They would pick it out and then eat it because it was, I guess it was the only thing that they could put in their mouth. It was the only thing that they could eat. So I asked the exact same question. let's get back to her charges. She's got 2 second-degree felony endangering, 10 third-degree felony counts of endangering, 7 misdemeanor, and then Gary Sr.'s just got 10 third-degree, 6 misdemeanor, and then Christina's got 2 second-degree felony endangering and 10 third degree, and then the 7 misdemeanor. Don't. Hush. So that's the paper tonight. That is why we are not doing the same show we were doing yesterday. This is where we need to be grown-ups about it, you know. Man, I was wrong. I was wrong. A lot of us wanted Elizabeth to be one person, the one person in that house that could be understood, that she was different. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she was controlled. Maybe she was broken. Maybe she was also abused. Maybe there is still some part of her story that explains pieces of her life. But these new charges mean that we cannot keep talking about her only as a possible victim. We have to talk about her as an indicted defendant in a child sex abuse case. That does not mean she's convicted. That does not mean that we know every fact, but it does mean that the sympathy lane just got a whole lot narrower. And if these allegations are proven, then the public was not just looking at a woman who failed to protect children and failed to protect her own children. We were looking at somebody accused of participating in the harm.
That is a new case.
William says, I'm waiting for the whole story before I make up my mind. We have heard it all. We've heard all kinds of things, but there's no proof. Remember, innocent until proven guilty. Yeah, well, that's what I said. You know, where she's not convicted yet. We still have not seen the mental health evaluations and stuff, but this does change things for me a little bit.
The warrant was never a welfare check.
Well, I already watched it. Okay, I'll read it. As child endangering indictments were handed down against, can you see it? Okay. Against the Siders family. Let's do it this way. Yeah, that's better, ain't it? 2 defendants, Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders, were also indicted in a separate child sex abuse case. According to the Ohio Attorney General Andy Wilson's office, Gary Siders Jr., 36, and Elizabeth Siders, 33, were both indicted on 4 charges each, stemming from an investigation opened in March of 26. That was months ago, by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation regarding unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. The Attorney General says the victim in this case is not a member of their immediate family. Now, and I'm learning to pay attention to the wording. They said immediate. So that means it could be a member of the distant family, just not the immediate family. Wilson says the indictments allege that Gary Jr. and Elizabeth Siders engaged in sexual conduct with a minor more than 10 years younger than their own age, between January of 22 and September of 22. That was 4 years ago. So this is going back. And you got to remember how many times she's been pregnant. That means there's some major sexual perversion going on here that I know I'm kind of embarrassed and ashamed of myself for not seeing it sooner and wanting to give so much of a benefit of the doubt. And see, that's where I had said before, I feel like sometimes we push our own trauma and our own stuff onto different situations. Man, this is just really, I wish I had not been so naive.
It was a search for a man's DNA in a child sex abuse case. The charge breakdown is dense,